let's not forget, we learned last week, FBI lovers, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, they too who need to be investigated for obstruction of justice. But remember this text. Page texted Strzok July 2016, mocking Lynch's statement about accepting the FBI's conclusions in the Clinton email case, writing, it was, quote, a real profile in courage since she knows no charges will be brought. They knew the fix was in, and they determined last week when we saw their testimony that, in fact, they knew it was all being run directly from the AG's office. This is getting deeper than we ever thought. And you better believe they played an integral role in first clearing Hillary Clinton, their chosen candidate that should win $100 million to zero, and setting up an insurance policy, a.k.a. the Russia investigation against Donald Trump, just in case he won the election that they tried their very best to prevent from happening. Now, the time for accountability is now. The time for transparency is now. The time to expose these few upper echelon, deep state, those that were conspiring the whole time. They need to be exposed. Otherwise, this will happen again. We need to make it that no future president has to endure what has gone on here. And that means the American people need to have faith that their will not be undermined by cowardly, corrupt, unelected bureaucrats that think they know better than we smelly Walmart people. Now, we'll cover this coming up with the president in just a moment, but let's quickly turn to Chicago. For months, the overworked, literally, Chicago Police Department was forced to devote thousands of precious man-hours. We know about the violence in Chicago, and millions of dollars to investigate a purported hate crime. You know the story. Actor Jussie Smollett claiming a duo of white Trump-supporting racists wearing red MAGA hats attacked him on the streets of Chicago. According to police, Smollett was lying, and his claims were an elaborate hoax designed to boost his fame while denigrating Trump supporters everywhere. Now, he was charged with 16 felonies, but within 10 minutes, we find out he's not going to be prosecuted. He will not see the inside of an Illinois state prison. He won't be forced to repay the city of Chicago. He's even thinking about suing them. And he won't even own up to these alleged crimes. Jussie is famous. Jussie's well-connected to far-left politicians. So I guess Jussie gets a get-out-of-jail-free card while the people of Chicago are left holding the bill. And tonight, while the people of Chicago are left blindsided by what is a corrupt, self-serving state attorney, Jussie still could face justice. Remember, the racist, threatening letter containing white powder allegedly sent through the mail to him, maybe by himself, according to some reports, that's a federal crime, needs to be investigated, and apparently no federal investigation is ongoing. Justice must be served. Again, we can't have a dual justice system in this country, and he must be held accountable. Make no mistake, Jussie Smollett's actions are a product of the mainstream media. In other words, they were so quick to amp this story up and believe without any investigation whatsoever, no matter how far-fetched, no matter how ridiculous. Remember, the two guys were on tape buying the very things that were allegedly used in the crime. So long as it fits their anti-Trump narrative, we'll rush to destroy, smear anybody in the process. Look at the case of the slander and smearing and besmirching of a 16-year-old kid. Yeah, remember the Nicholas Sandmann case? Covington high school kids? Their reputations for days brutalized by many of you watching in the media tonight. Because, he was a Trump supporter. Fair game. Beating up a 16-year-old kid the way you did? Well, watch out for Linwood. A lot of you will be paying out a lot of money over time. That's a prediction you can bet on. Now, we've also got to demand accountability for those so-called networks that call themselves news networks and their disgusting conspiratorial coverage every second, minute, hour of every day. Last night, we called out the chief conspiracy theorist at NBC News, Rachel Maddow, making a fortune at the expense of her views.
In part because of scandal, will affect the impact and the effectiveness of these military strikes. What would happen if Russia killed the power in Fargo today? Right? What would happen if all the natural gas lines that service Sioux Falls just poofed on the coldest day in recent memory, and it wasn't in our power whether or not to turn them back on? I mean, what would you do if you lost heat indefinitely as the act of a foreign power? Even among White House sources, there is now open speculation that the firing of McMaster last night and the announced hiring of John Bolton was timed by the president to distract from one particular interview that aired last night on CNN. an interview in which a woman named Karen McDougal discussed in detail what she says was a serious 10-month-long extramarital affair with the president.
If you booked Donald Trump on your show, what would your first question be?
Are you going to send me or anybody that I know to a camp?
I wonder if Tom Brokaw and Andy Lack are proud of this. Should never be trusted again, along with fake news, CNN, and so many others. All right, joining us now exclusively on the phone is the President of the United States. Mr. President, thank you for taking time for being with us tonight.
Well, thank you, Sean, very much. It's an honor.
I appreciate you being here. You really have not had an opportunity to react and respond to the Mueller report, the AG's letter that summarized the report, that exonerated you. No collusion after all these years, as you have been claiming. He left the decision as it relates to obstruction to the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General. They quickly said, no, that does not rise to that level, and I wanted to get your reaction.
Well, we're very happy about it. It's gone on for a long time, almost since the beginning of my term. And, you know, if you look at it, we've done so much despite that, but it was a cloud. It was a cloud that most people didn't believe, fortunately. They spent more than $30 million, hundreds of interviews of people, in some cases very innocent people that were put through the ringer, millions of document pages, millions and millions of document pages. And after that, there was no collusion, there was no obstruction. It was such a ridiculous thing that happened. On the other hand, you know, you look at how did this start? How did it start? You had dirty cops, you had people that are bad FBI folks. I know so many, they're incredible people, but at the top, they were not clean, to put it mildly. And what they did to our country was a terrible, terrible thing.
Mr. President, we've talked a lot on this program about the FISA abuse scandal, and this is what we know, that in August of 2016, we know Bruce Ohr warned everybody at the DOJ and the FBI that Christopher Steele hated you, that Hillary Clinton paid for the dossier, that it was not verified. But still, in October, and then 3 renewal application warrants approved, we're told by the Grassley-Graham memo, the bulk of information came from that phony dossier. Even Andrew McCabe said, no dossier, no FISA warrant. There were Russian lies disseminated to the American people before the election, but it also violated the rights of Carter Page and gave a backdoor into your campaign for spying, which I know the media made fun of at the time when you said it happened.
Well, when I said there could be somebody spying on my campaign, a lot of things happened. It was like it went wild out there. They couldn't believe that I could say such a thing. And as it turned out, that was small potatoes compared to what went on. When you look at what happened and when it happened and the money that was spent, the millions and millions on the phony dossier, and then they used the dossier to start things, and there was no truth whatsoever. It was a fraud, and paid for by Hillary Clinton and paid for by the Democrats and the DNC. It's hard to believe. If you wrote this as a novel, nobody would buy it. It would be a failure because it would be too unbelievable. Nobody would believe it's possible, the things that went on. And we're getting to the bottom of it, and it's got to be. I mean, you can never allow this to happen to another president. This can never, ever happen to a president again, Sean. That was a disgrace and an embarrassment to our country that they were allowed to get away with this. But hopefully they won't get away with it.
Do you now feel vindicated? Was there anything that the Attorney General's report, and I know you've called for, obviously, the whole Mueller memo to be released, did anything surprise you? And what about the people that were collateral damage in all of this?
Well, people were hurt so badly, so badly. Their lives have been ruined, and over something that should have never taken place, an investigation that should have never happened. There was no crime. As you know, you're only allowed to do this legally if there's a crime. There was no crime. They've all admitted it. Comey, who's a terrible guy, Comey and McCabe and Strzok and Page, the lover, Page, and all of these people, they've admitted in testimony that there was no crime. So they started an investigation based on no crime. I will say this, our new Attorney General, Bill Barr, is a a great gentleman, and I've heard about him for years. He's a great man. Had he been there initially, this all would not have happened, because what's gone on there is just a disgrace to our country.
Mr. President.
But a lot of innocent people were hurt very badly, and it's very, very sad, actually.
For this to never happen again, what do you think the path is to getting to that point? In other words, the checks and balances that you believe need to be put in place so that a FISA court is, in this case, is not told Hillary paid for Russian lies. Its own author doesn't stand by it, but yet it was used to obtain 4 FISA warrants that gave a backdoor to your campaign. What do you think needs to happen to prevent this from ever happening again? What checks and balances, and what should be pursued or not pursued, in your opinion?
Well, I'm going to leave that to our new Attorney General, who's been so incredible, actually, and that's based on a lot of people saying this is a very, very special person, and that's what you need in that position. That's a very important position. You need so many different, you need genius, you need rationality, you need so many different levels of good. And I'm also going to leave it to Lindsey Graham. He's head of Judiciary and Senate, and a very, very good guy and a very smart guy. And, I'm just going to let them do whatever they want to do. And I would imagine they don't like what they see, to put it mildly, but you'd have to ask them. I think it's much more appropriate. I purposely didn't want to involve myself in this whole thing. I wanted to let other people do it, and I wish it didn't take so long. We're talking about really longer than, if you think about it, longer than Mueller. It was many months before that Strzok and Page were talking about the insurance policy, right? An insurance policy, just in case Hillary Clinton lost. They wanted an insurance policy against me. And what we were playing out until just recently was the insurance policy. They wanted to do a subversion. It was treason. It was really treason. If the Republican Party had done this to the Democrats, if we had done this to President Obama, you'd have 100 people in jail right now, and it would be treason. It would be considered treason, and they'd be in jail for the rest of their lives. But it worked out the other way, and it's just really a horrible situation, and an incredible outcome, or certainly very close to an outcome. And we'll have to see how it all started. But I'm going to leave that to other people, including the Attorney General and others, to make that determination. But it's very, very important for our country to know, because in 50 years from now, in 100 years from now, if somebody tries the same thing, they have to know that the penalty will be very, very great if and when they get caught.
Before I get to the media question, would you consider, sir, a pardon? Look at General Flynn, for example, or, Papadopoulos, who's had to spend 12 days in jail. Is that something that you would consider at some point?
Well, as I told you, many, many people were hurt, incredibly hurt by this whole scam. It's just a scam, but it's much worse than that. It's at the highest level, and the importance is what it meant to our country. It's a very, very dark period, and I think maybe we're shedding a lot of light. We're gonna come into a bright, beautiful, sunny day. But when you mention General Flynn, he was a man who had a incredible record in the military. You see what happened to him. The FBI said he wasn't lying, as I understand it, and the Mueller group said he was lying, and what he's gone through, and what so many others have gone through. I could name names that would just go on for your entire show. It's a very, very sad thing. I don't want to talk about pardons now, but I can say it's so sad on so many levels.
Let me ask you, I believe you probably have forever branded fake news, and I'm not sure if some of these companies will ever recover. I talked earlier in my monologue about, I don't really recall them ever talking about record accomplishments, record low unemployment, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women in the workplace, youth unemployment. I mean, some really amazing numbers. But I see every second, minute, hour of every day there are attacks. I'm just going to play you a small snippet. I'm only picking one network, in this case CNN, and just a small snippet of some of the coverage. And speculation and things that have been said about you and want to get your reaction.
Russian operatives claim to have compromising personal and financial information about Mr. Trump.
We are looking at the possibility that the President of the United States and those around him during an election campaign colluded with a hostile foreign power to undermine the basis of our democracy.
This is evidence of willingness to commit collusion.
It does look like collusion. It does look like he's listening to Putin more than he is American intelligence.
So this picture that the president is so desperate to avoid, this picture of collusion, begins to fill in.
The president sees the walls closing in and is lashing out.
He's desperate. He's obviously flailing around because he feels the walls closing in.
Mr. President, I could play an hour's worth of coverage of that for 2 years it's gone on. What is your answer? What is your reaction to the media? I know you've been very critical. Fake news.
Well, as many people have said, and fortunately we've had some incredible people that really were fair. And, you know, when you mention Rush or Mark Levin or Steve Doocy and Ainsley in the morning and Brian and Laura, Jesse, Janine, I hope Janine's back soon.
She's back Saturday.
So many people. I mean, I don't want to keep going because I'm going to leave out so many, but I could again go so long. But so many great people have been, they get it. Nobody has been tougher, nobody on Russia than me. And everybody said, my enemies say that when they're reasonable enemies, when they're fair. You look at the pipeline exposing that going into Germany. You look at oil with a number one. I mean, it's what we've done with energy and oil and gas, and that's all competition for Russia. You look at the Ukraine. You look at so many different levels. You look at our military. Look at the fact that we would have been powered by wind, which wouldn't have worked, by the way, because it only blows sometimes and lots of problems come about. But we are stronger now as a country than we've ever been. We're doing better financially than we've ever done. Our markets are hitting records all the time. I have many, many records of the highest stock market. People's 401ks are doing better than they've ever done by far. It's up almost 50% from the time I'm elected president, and other countries are way down. You look at China as an example. We're negotiating a deal with China. We're going to make a very good deal with China. China is way down. We're way up. But nobody has been tougher to Russia or on Russia than Donald Trump, President Trump. Nobody even close. And yet